All right. One take. Sometimes it's easy to find what's on my mind and what troubles me. It's easy to see where I'm wrong, but time goes by relentlessly. So take all I have left and leave me to rest, and don't trouble me. Let me believe that you're gone, because time goes by relentlessly. So take my last breath and pull it out of my chest and let me be free, because time goes by impatiently. Because time goes by relentlessly.
All right. So for the third time, we are here with Mr. Paul Hanich, blues legend of Kearney, Nebraska. Now, what we had been talking about before the recording screwed up, not only was Paul Hanich's first foray in like favorite artist, Eric Clapton, mainly because, like you were saying, it was parent-approved music, good stuff like that. One of the things that we were getting into was how he had a really big love for kind of heavier rock explosion that happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. One of the questions that we were talking about was the top five, more or less. Or let's reduce it to like top three.
Okay.
So we're doing like Tool was number one.
Yeah, Tool's number one, easy. Rage Against the Machine is probably up there for sure.
Hell yeah.
Those albums were life-changing the first time I heard them. And then, boy, what else? I know earlier, one of our earlier recordings before we screwed it up, was I mentioned Disturbed.
Yeah.
And I think Disturbed, like, looking back at it now, I don't get it. But at the time, like, the thing is, they toured around here. They stopped in Lincoln, like, 3 times a year. And they always put on a good show. So I love that band.
Hell yeah.
Like, they didn't ignore Nebraska. Like, they came here and hit it. And they were awesome. Man, who else from that? I remember the apartment I lived in here in town when I got my first guitar. I'm trying to think back to that year in that apartment. Like, what was I listening to? Man, Tool was a big one. That was right around the first time hearing it. I didn't hear it. I didn't get exposed to it till like what's the
Lateralis, 10,000 Days.
the one before that, Anima.
Oh, but yeah.
Anima. That was my first experience with them. I remember being at a party and someone put that on. And I just remember hearing the intro track, and I was instantly like, what is that? And just walked over to the stereo and just stood there until the album was done. Like, that's amazing. And of course, like, if you're familiar with Tool at all, CD doesn't have their name anywhere on it. It's just a disturbing image. And it's like, so I pulled the CD out of the CD player, and I'm walking around like, who is this? Like, whose CD is this? Trying to figure out the name of the band. Finally, I found like a dude that lived there, and it's like, oh yeah, that's Tool. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, I was super into that stuff back in the 2000s.
One thing that's funny, so I didn't get into Tool until I was about 22, and I had that same experience. Someone played it, and I was just like, where's the name? Where are the credits? What's happening?
Yeah.
And the one for me was Lateralis, and it was just, I couldn't read the damn words on there, just all the psychedelic stuff. And it's so interesting to me how they never wrote lyrics down, and for the life of you on the internet, especially at that time, you try to type in Tool on Google, you're getting nothing but Tools,
Right.
and it was impossible to find it.
Yep.
When you were saying like bands like that didn't, skip or forget Nebraska, whether it was that time or even now today, what are some acts where when you saw that on the bill, Omaha, Lincoln, anywhere else, you're just like, what the hell? And like, whether you're able to make it or not, what were some that were just like, that's a legendary pull?
I don't know. I lived in Lincoln for a year, and so, which that would have been the year 2000. Yeah. I lived in Lincoln in the year 2000. So
Everything slamming together, the old, the new.
yeah. Yep. And I mean, I remember when I went to college, my college roommate, I had a kind of all over there genre-wise, because in high school I was kind of into punk. I was listening to NoFX and Pennywise and, that kind of thing. And I'd go to like these local punk shows around here. There was, they'd be at the Knights of Columbus Hall, like we'd do punk shows there back in the day. Where, there's, now it's like Platte Valley Tap House or whatever. But back then, when I was in high school, that was just an abandoned building. And whoever owned it let these local punk kids have punk shows in there.
What the hell?
And so it'd be a local band, and there'd be some band traveling through. I can't imagine any of them made any money.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it, but I'd go to all these crazy punk shows, and and so some of my favorite bands, even back then, were like these weird, super local, small time bands, because there's just something to seeing a band live and seeing the energy of it live that hits different than hearing it on a record. But anyways, so I was into punk, went to college. My college roommate was like, have you ever listened to the Misfits? I'm like, no, never heard of the Misfits. And so he took me to see them. I saw the Misfits in Lincoln in the year 2000. And that was quite the experience. This at that time, that was probably one of the first rock shows I ever went to. That wasn't, that was like a bigger show. I think, like I said, all the shows I went to in high school were all small local affairs. That was the first one where it was like a show that I decided, like, yeah, I'm going to buy a ticket and go to this show as an adult. And it was the Misfits. And then, I was already into Tool at that point, and I was listening to Tool and, doing all those things. And so, yeah, kind of, to recap the whole thing here. Got into Clapton super young, early. Got into Clapton's blues stuff. Then kind of, in high school and throughout high school, I got into the hard rock thing. And then, it wasn't until I got married where I came back to the blues and rediscovered that interest. Sorry, I don't even remember what your question was.
No, you're good. You're good. That did answer my question. So, how has the scene of Kearney changed? Because you said punk shows in an abandoned building, and that took me back to something that my buddies used to do in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Took a condemned building, called it Cafe Rev. It didn't exist on any map. All that good stuff. DIY shows. People you never saw again.
Yeah.
Just playing, thrashing around. How and or why has the Kearney scene changed from that to where it is now? Not necessarily that's bad, just different. Different.
I think it's kind of a hard question to answer because I recognize that part of my perception of the local music scene changes with age.
Fair.
It's like now, I'm in my 40s now. I'm probably not going to hear about the local little punk show that happens somewhere. Like, I'm just not in those circles anymore. So those might still exist. It doesn't feel like they do to me. But maybe somewhere there's some young kids just thrashing in a garage somewhere. And I hope they are.
Yes. Never stop playing music. Doesn't matter if you think no one's going to show up.
Right.
Or if no one does. Do it.
But as far as, from my perspective as a guy playing in the music scene, I don't know. There's always been kind of a mixture. You've had the venues where, back in the mid-2000s when I got into my first band and started playing live shows, like, you had to play 4 hours. You played 9 to 1. That was the expectation. You'd have set breaks in there, obviously, but everybody was a cover band. Like, you had to play that long. You almost had to be. No one was going to sit around and listen to your originals for that long. But if you wanted to make any money at all, you had to play for 4 hours, which that has changed quite a bit, I think. That still exists in some places within the current music scene, but less so now. Like, there's less of an expectation that you're going to play the whole night. It's like you're going to put on your show. You're going to do your thing. Then you can get off stage. And I think that's an improvement that leans, I think, more towards original music and people doing their own thing, which I think is super great.
Because, I never even thought about that. When I was younger, you'd see the same fellow on stage for 3 and 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, now you're able to reduce that time and still get paid a decent sum and also then put out your own original work more often than covers overtaking the whole set.
Yeah. And I'd be cautious saying get paid a decent sum.
Fair.
That's still pretty rare, especially if you're all original. Mm-hmm. That's still an uphill battle. But now there are venues that will allow you they'll give you a space to do your thing. Which there were a couple back in the day, but they would always come and go real quick. There was an old venue back in the day called the Roman that was, half of it was like trying to be a fancy restaurant, and the other half they'd have just wild shows late at night.
That's legendary.
Yeah, it was, you'd get everything from like, indie singer-songwriters coming through doing that thing to like full-on hardcore punk shows to metal shows. It was kind of all over the place, but it was up to the musicians to figure out how to monetize it. You weren't going to get paid from the venue at all, but they'd give you a space at least.
When it comes to, because I've seen this in San Antonio, I've seen this everywhere, so it's not unique to the Kearney scene. But do you think that listeners, viewers, not wanting to listen to only originals, is that for a sense of familiarity? Do you think, like, maybe they just get bored, disengaged, too drunk, or just it's not familiar to them?
I think that's the biggest thing. It's it's you're being presented with original music when most of the time the people that are there weren't aware they were going to be presented with original music. So I think it's some of it's an expectation thing, and now my opinion is now the music just not the local scene, but just music in general. It's like now you're able to like develop a musical taste that's very niche, and which wasn't the case, back in the day. Back in the, I was talking about the cover band days, which there are still cover bands, but you could always do a classic rock cover band because everyone that worked a job, classic rock radio was what they listened to all day. And then they'd go out on the weekend and they'd hear guys play it live, or their version of it or whatever. Now I think it's really hard to, even with playing covers, to find a song that's going to like get everybody. It's like, oh, okay, this cover, okay, I got those two at that table. Okay, I played Johnny Cash. Oh, I got that older couple over at that table. Whatever the case may be. But yeah, I don't think it feels to me that our current local music scene, we've got a lot of great musicians, and we're still, I think, trying to figure out how to build a crowd that's interested in hearing something they've never heard before. You still kind of, even if you're playing all original music, you got to try to give them some common thread that they can grab onto, like, oh, I recognize that. So, okay. And then once you get them to grab that thread, then maybe you can pull them into weird directions and get them to listen to something they don't know. But
so the covers are kind of, they serve as like a grounding moment for the crowd.
Yeah. I think for me personally, when I, especially like if I play an old blues stuff or if I bring out a country song or something like that, that's my way of introducing a crowd that's never heard of me, maybe doesn't know me at all. I can introduce them and be like, okay, this is where I'm coming from musically. And so you can build this common ground, like, okay, at one point in time, we listened to all the same stuff. Now this is where I took it. And then I can present them with what I do,
I love that. I love that, like that perspective on that, because that's how I've always thought of that. Is at least when I would pay covers and come in, mainly because I work at the other side now, but when I was going to shows and stuff, I came expecting original music, and if I was lucky, I would hear a cover. And not just the big budget shows or even the Warped Tour kind of middle area. Yeah. Anyone. Mm-hmm. And again, in San Antonio, it'd be mainly covers, and then, hey man, here's an original. And I was locked in every time. And it took me a while to realize that the rest of the crowd around me, wherever I've been, was not necessarily somewhere.
Yeah.
But I feel like you said, building the scene of people who want to hear stuff they've never heard continuously, because that's why I come there every single day, but even before I worked there, if I could, if there was a show, because I wanted to hear something I never heard before. And it's like, yeah, you can do that on a Spotify daily mix, but you can't see it and fully experience it,
Yeah. And again, it's also that, it's easy to get on the internet and find something you've never heard before, but to hear it live and hear, you get way more, to me at least, I think you get way more of the energy and intention of the art when it's live. If you're at a live show and it's, it's mixed well and the sound system's good and you hear original music, man, you can feel the intent behind it. You know what they're trying to convey. Whereas sometimes on albums, in an ideal world, the album is the quintessential version of of that. But to me, it's never quite the same, especially in this age of streaming, and where a lot of times the algorithm takes over and it's just background noise that you're not. The live show, you get your chance to listen intently with intention and really pay attention. Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, I've had the privilege to see you more than 8 times. The thing is, every time, whether it's Down and Out, I'm not sure if that's the name of the song, but no one knows you when you're down and out.
Yeah.
Whether it's that or it's your cover of Hallelujah. When you can ask Ben or Waylon or even my mom, it's every single time I see that because I'm allowing myself to be there, not think about work the day, that same day before, or other stuff happening. I'm able to just actually emotionally release there, and feel it every single time as if it was the first time ever. And I don't necessarily know if that's a skill to be learned, just to be able to be present at shows and active listen kind of. But I'm either doing that or I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And the moment I put that down, it washes over, and it feels amazing every single time. And each time I wonder why I even picked up the phone. I think it was Chuck that mentioned it. Chuck from Marion Gun. Have you ever had that moment, or do you have that moment of you're playing, you go into one song, or maybe you're trying something new, and all of a sudden, the person who's been sitting there all night like this goes like that, and you have that feeling of, oh shit, I got him. Do you get that feeling? Does that happen to you?
I do at times. I kind of try not to pay attention to that, because I think there's part of me that thinks that the way to that moment is like, man, I just need to get lost in the music myself. If I'm lost in it, I'm not paying attention to who's looking at their phone anymore, and I'm not even going to notice when they set it down. Fair. And I think they're probably setting it down because they realize, like, oh, this guy's in it,
Yeah.
And so you can get them to kind of come along for the ride sometimes, not always, but yeah, I do know that moment. It's definitely like, there's definitely played shows that are, I think, shows at like the other side, the atmosphere there is a little bit more artistic, and so you're allowed to be a little more artistic. But I've definitely played shows where that's not the expectation, and so trying to get that it's a different kind of crowd. Well, honestly, I've played some restaurant gigs where, like, most of the people are there for the chicken dinner special. They're not there to hear me play my sad songs, and so some of those, you kind of, like, I'll start getting intentional with it, like, all right, I got to find what this crowd is into, and so then I'm hunting, like, where's the toe tapping, it's like I'll cycle through some different genres, different feels, different tempos, like start getting into the deep waters with the covers, like, all right, where do I connect with this audience? Where is it? And, man, once you see those toes tapping under the table while they're eating their chicken, like, all right.
Got them.
Now I know.
And so, like, when you were saying about being on stage and kind of, not really paying attention to all that, would you kind of say, like, you're really in the zone up there? Like, it's maybe a tunnel vision type situation?
Ideally, that's the goal. Mm-hmm. The goal is to forget that the microphone's there. You forget that you're, playing a show to an audience. Like, I think, me personally, I feel like my best work is when that's the case. When, like, I'd be playing this whether you guys were here or not, and it's like I'm feeling good just doing it, regardless of how the crowd feels about it. So that's always the goal. That doesn't always happen. Mm-hmm. There's some times where you're just uncomfortable, and it's like, I hate to say fake it, but sometimes you got to, sometimes, like, man, I just don't have it tonight. And so you kind of not phone it in, but you're going through the motions. Mm-hmm. Which those are never the best shows, but they happen.
I get you. Is there ever a type of, what do you call it? Like a pregame ritual you follow or anything like that? Psych yourself up or psych yourself out?
For me, I'd say the only thing is, like, I like to try to set up early. So I'd like to have a solid hour between, okay, I'm hauling in gear and I'm setting it up. Where, okay, I want that all to be done, and then I have an hour before I play anything, to where I can just be in the room and get relaxed in the room, have a beer, have a whiskey, whatever, just to have a breather when you go, it's schlepping gear around, getting like that. That's the part that feels like work. And I find like if I'm rushed, I'm like, okay, I've got to set up all the gear and then play. Then the playing starts to feel like it's part of the work.
You don't get that time to debrief, decompress.
Right. So I like to get the work done, decompress a little bit, then go up and play my set. So that's the ideal, but that doesn't always happen. And I don't really have any hard rituals that I have to do. It's, I'm pretty relaxed about the whole situation.
I feel you. And speaking of all this, like, kind of going around, being able to feel out the crowd, feel out the situation before the game, the show actually begins. You were just on tour, is that correct? Or you were somewhere else for a little bit?
I think calling it a tour might be a bit of a overstatement. It was, it was 80% vacation, and then I sprinkled in some shows.
So how was that? Where all did you go in
So I went to Wyoming and Colorado. Started in a town called Riverton, Wyoming, which is, about 10 hours from here. It was a good haul. But there was a little bar in Riverton called the Cedar Bar. I played there back in April for the first time. And it was, the type of thing where I have a childhood friend who lives in town. He's always asking me to come visit. I'm like, I will someday. And eventually, this year I decided, like, all right, let's go do it.
Hell yeah.
And so, like, all right, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to play shows. So at least, have a little shot of making some gas money and, make up for missing work or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I had asked him, at the start of the year, like, okay, I'm coming here last weekend of April, find me a show. Well, he didn't. I hit him up the week I was coming, like, all right, so where am I playing? Like, oh, that's this weekend? I played this place called the Cedar Bar, and it was very much like, it's like, just get me a number and I'll call the place and, I'll do it, whatever. So I call the lady that runs the place and like, hey, I know you guys have never heard of me, like, whatever, so you don't have to pay me anything, just let me put out a tip jar and come play for a couple hours. And that went really way better than I could have expected. And so they called me and asked me to come back in September, and so there was that one, and then I also played in Laramie, Wyoming, and back in April. Those were the only two places I played. I just did a little weekend run back in April. Played those two places. And then in Laramie, I ended up booking a private party, and so that ended up being a thing. And so I ended up they both wanted me to do this private party and come back to the Cedar Bar, but they were a week apart. They were like, this one was like Friday the 13th, and then it wasn't until the next Saturday, that private party. It's like, well, I'm not making that drive 2 weekends in a row. I'm just going to stay out there and get as many shows as I can between them. And so that's what sparked the whole thing.
I mean, hell, I would call it a tour myself.
Well, it was 10 days, but only 4 shows. So
Fair.
There was a lot of camping and partying and just relaxing in the mountains,
Have you ever thought of, or have you ever made it down to Texas before with a vacation and thought to yourself, damn, I want to play out here, or have you played out there?
I have not. I've played Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. That's it.
One of the reasons I ask is that night my mother was like, there's like 2 like different folks I know, completely different people, setting up like these Texas things, and they want to pick up folks from different parts of the states. Mm-hmm. And I was like, like right here, because it's blues and actually murderfolk too. I had to describe to her what murderfolk was. That was fun. And showed her like Harvey Poe and shit. Mm-hmm. And I said, this is someone you want to hit up as long as there's a solid window to make that kind of thing happen, whether it's this year, next year, in a few years. Mm-hmm. But do you, by the way, have any business cards by any chance?
I don't.
Damn.
I am super unprofessional about the whole thing. It's, like I make merch and I only put my initials on it. I don't even put, like, so even if someone's wearing my t-shirt, they can't really figure out who the heck I am. You know, like I'm really bad at the marketing and merch side of things, and yeah, yeah, that's probably where it comes from. It's like for some reason, like, oh, I got to be super enigmatic about crap, and I can't just.
They see the symbol and they will know.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, no, I don't have a business card or anything.
But I mean, definitely though, I'm gonna find a way to get probably your Facebook and socials to her.
Yeah, you bet.
Because I have been personally thinking of doing this kind of switcheroo type situation. Take some of the best and able artists from here and from San Antonio and Austin area, and just do a flip, and have those guys come up here, play up here, and then have you guys go down there, and meet up with like my mother and a bunch of different other musician friends that we know, and just have this whole nice little Texas thing, and set that all up. We'll keep everybody in the wind on that, but it's definitely something we want you to be a part of, because
for sure.
Man, the music's legendary. What are some like some dream states or some dream city locations that you're like, you know what, if I can nail that son of a bitch down?
I don't know. I don't know that I have any that are like, for me, it's like, I just love to play, man. Where it's at matters very little. It's, I'll play anywhere. I love playing the weird little town that's out in the middle of nowhere just as much as I like, playing in Denver or, whatever. So it's, just want to play wherever people are cool, that want to, like, it was like, I'm shocked sometimes. Like, sometimes you go to a little town and, they're like, how to play Chattahoochee? I'm like, oh no, it's going to be a long night. And then, and other times you go to a small town and they're super into it. They just like, then that was kind of my experience in Riverton, Wyoming the first time, is that like, oh, it's something new. Like, we've heard we've been hearing the same stuff over and over and over again, and I come in and like, oh, this is completely different. And they were all about it, and I was really surprised. I'm like, oh wow, this is cool. So yeah, I'll play anywhere.
Do you have any albums out yourself?
I recorded a little thing back in, I think I finished it and put it out in 2008. It's on SoundCloud, and depending on the day, it may or may not be publicly available. It just depends on my mood.
Fair.
And, 'cause sometimes I listen to it and, like, it's a fair document of where I was at that time. Then sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, ooh, no one should ever hear this. It's one of I put it on there just to, like, for archival purposes. Mm-hmm. So it's there. It's not just on some hard drive that I'm going to step on at the night, drunkenly step on one night and never be able to get it again. Like, so it's there. We did that benefit show Friday. That was my last show for this year. So I'm spending the next 2 months just writing and recording and trying to finish an album. So that's the goal. Hopefully, I promise nothing, because I've been talking about the album for years. I feel like I have enough material now to just do it, but we'll see.
So, Paul, when I first came to Kearney, Nebraska, less than a year ago probably, I think one of the first bands I came and saw when I moved here, again, was like Tri-Mind, and then I saw, the Darts and some of those groups. But you were around for groups like, the Darts when they were younger, and you were around for the Range Maggots, and you were around for some of those groups. What were some of the big local groups that you really personally loved, just in the Kearney scene?
The Darts, always. They've been around for as long as I've been in the scene. They were always probably my favorite. There was a really cool band called Trace Diablos.
And that involved Bill Saba, correct?
Yep. They were really cool. One of the funnest like old local shows I remember is Trace Diablos, and it was the Darts, and they played the show at Thunderhead. So they used to do those shows upstairs at Thunderhead.
So I've recently started going to Thunderhead
Okay.
off and on, and I met a gentleman named Stan the Man. Do you remember Stan the Man?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He said he used to play at Thunderhead. Was that Thunderhead a pretty big deal as a venue?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, and they only did local bands. Most of the other venues would do stuff traveling through town or whatever, but Thunderhead was always just the local guys played there. And it was always a huge party, and it was always a ton of fun. And, but yeah, the Trace Diablos and the Darts, they both, instead of like having one spot to set up, they set up on different walls. And so they could just trade sets back and forth without having to tear anything down. So it was just just awesome music coming at you from both directions. It was awesome. It was a ton of fun.
So I think that's a cool amount of, just fun bands. I mean, it wasn't a lot of fun bands that we just talked about, but just to kind of transition over, were there any super heavy bands that you were really into, or heavier bands?
I didn't really run in that scene. It was a little more segmented back then. There definitely were heavy bands, but I didn't know those guys that well, and like at the time, back in like 2006, 7, 8, 9, in those years, I played 3 nights a week. I did a solo show every Thursday somewhere. Then I was in 2 different bands. I was in a band called Me, You, and Paul, and we'd play either Friday or Saturday. And then I was in like a blues band that would play the other night. And so, like, the nights any of the bands were playing, like, I didn't get to go and see a lot of the local stuff because I was always playing somewhere.
Sure, and just to put it in perspective, too, so this was not the personal blues revelation, though. Your blues band was not at that time.
No. Yeah, that wasn't until 2019.
And then for those who wouldn't have been around, who would have been in Me, You, and Paul that we might know?
Dale Phillips from the Range Maggots. Caleb Simmons, previously of the Personal Blues Revelation, or, before he left town. But he was the drummer in that band. And a guy named Dustin Quinn was on bass. And, it was just the 4 of us, just rocking out, having a good time.
Do you think, going back to Thunderhead, too, that Thunderhead, at that time, this is more for us, I suppose, did they disclude heavy shows, or was it kind of like anyone could play at Thunderhead if they were local?
I don't know. I think they probably had some of the heavier bands play there, but I don't remember. That was a long time ago. But I think they probably had some heavier shows upstairs there. Back then, while they had the food, it was less of a restaurant vibe and more of a bar vibe in there. And so, once the kitchen closed, party was on. And we'd, move all the tables out of the way and have a rock show. So,
On the other side was different too, right? It was the garage at one point.
It did not exist yet back then.
Okay, this is a totally different time frame.
Yeah, this would have been slightly before the garage. Which I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast here, but I actually quit playing music for 9 years or something like that. And I think the garage opened up like right before I kind of dropped out of the scene for a while. I think I was only ever in the garage once. I never played there.
I think I've only seen one YouTube video ever, and it's the Darts playing in the garage. That's the only one I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So, was the Rock Shop, I guess, back to Thunderhead, was the Rock Shop relevant back in the Thunderhead time?
Nope.
Because the other side has that, that whole little poster of J-Rod's Rock Shop. So
I didn't even know J-Rod back then.
Wow. Okay.
I think he was probably still living in Lincoln at that time. I don't know his timeline exactly, but I think
Sure.
that's. I'm not even sure if he was back in town yet. But
So what else was big for me, you, and Paul, and for the other blues band at that time to play at besides Thunderhead, places like that?
we played Copperfields. Me and Paul, I don't know, we were kind of all over the place. Played at, I know I mentioned it earlier, the Roman. We played there quite a bit. Those were the main places in town, but we got out of town quite a bit too. We'd play little festivals and stuff during the summer and things like that. But yeah, we'd play. There's a bar at I don't know what the name of the hotel is now. Just first one south of the interstate. There used to be a bar in there called Paradise Cove. We'd play in Paradise Cove. We were like their house band for a while. So if they didn't have anything else going on a Saturday, we'd go out and play.
That's cool. I haven't heard like any of those places, so you can tell how shortly I've been involved in Kearney.
Mm.
What else would be relevant as far as the scene in any time frame for you? Like, were places like Retrograde? Did you play places like that when they were booming?
Well, I mean, Retrograde was fairly short-lived. Cool idea. Again, I think that kind of comes down to like we have lots of cool musicians, but we're still building the fandom behind it. And if you're going to have a place that is all ages and doesn't get by on selling alcohol, like you really got to have the fandom there to make a venue like that work. So it's disappointing to see that it didn't work out for them, but there's been hundreds of different venues that pop up and go away, and or have live music for a while and stop having music, and so it's always this kind of ongoing wave of venues that come and go, and that's I think part of any music scene. But yeah, I'd say the only ones that have like really stayed throughout my time in it would be like Cunningham's. They've been there the whole time and are still there and still have music. But other than that, that's the only one I can think of that has had music my whole journey. Yeah.
Well, as someone with a lot of wisdom, I mean, someone who's gone as far to teach me things about,
I don't know if I go that far.
being an instrumentalist and being a musician, and even, some personality traits and stuff. I mean, what do you think would help today's musicians get into the scene? People that are starting bands or are not, necessarily consistent in the scene. What gets them to where everyone else is, just, playing in bars and playing live music and attracting a crowd? What does that?
I think it's, persistence and just you have to be around. Find a local band you like, go and hang out. You're probably going to meet, those musicians, first of all, but you're going to meet other musicians who are into what that band is doing. So that's your best shot at meeting like-minded musicians. So really it's just like you got to be around. If there's an open mic night, you should be there. There's tons of musicians. That's how I came back to music. My first time playing live was at an open mic night at the Other Side. It's the first one they ever did. Walked in, didn't know anybody. Nobody knew who I was. Got up there, played. Jay Willie, the bar manager at the time, as soon as I was done, said, "Hey man, how would you like to open this show?" And boom, had a show booked. And so yeah, it's really just you got to get out and meet people that are, you just got to try to find people that are. If you wanted to go the band route, you got to find people that are into what you're into, and at the same time, you got to recognize that it's a small enough town that if what you're into is super niche, you might have to have a bit of an open mind and be willing to stretch what you're into a little bit, and be willing, at least at first, like play some stuff you're not comfortable doing. It'll make you a better musician either way. But yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to push that too. I feel like outside of, the scene, I'm surrounded and by people that are also inside of the scene that are nervous, not willing to get out there for things like open mic. What's the way to push these people into just putting themselves out there for the first time?
Well, I mean, I think as a music scene, what we can do is really encourage people to do it. And when they do it, when they take the risk, like, be there to support them. Even if deep down in your heart you think they suck, like, tell them good job. Look for something they did well and tell them they did that well. It's, just as musicians, musicians can tend to be on the elitist side of things a little bit. But I think it's important to always just be positive and support everybody. Like, there's no reason not to. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a band getting a gig that you think isn't as good as your band, Like, there's nothing wrong with them getting the gig. And, if you can, like, I know there's a lot of shows, and, I can't go to all the shows. Wish I had the energy for that, or the money, but I don't. But, I try to go to shows and support it. And, that's the biggest thing is, like, if you have a friend that plays music at home and they're way too nervous, maybe they're not ready for an open mic night. That's okay. That's okay. You know what? Have a party. Invite them to the party. Say, hey, bring your guitar. Get them to play in front of 5 people. Maybe that's too much. Get them to play in front of 2. Get them to play in front of you. You gotta, like, if you want people to play, you gotta give them the support and get them built up. Not everybody is gonna have the mindset to just say, to heck with it. I'm just gonna do it. I mean, I've been there. I've played in a basement for many, many years before anyone ever heard me play a note. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's the big thing. It's just staying positive and being supportive of people, even if they're not at your level,
It's kind of scary getting up, I think, on the stage. It was more scary at Joe's honky tonk than it was at the other side, just because I think I know more people at the other side overall. But it's a very nervous thing being up there, especially in front of people that and if they've never seen you before, or if they have seen you, it's just like, I have to see you later if I screw this one up. I mean, how did you get over general nervousness when you were first playing? Like, what got you to stay in front of those crowds for prolonged periods of time?
I mean, it's really, like, it's reps. Like, now I'm rarely nervous on stage, but that's because I've done it a lot over the years. And so I think that's the biggest one, is just putting in the reps. The feeling's still there. It's just not going to affect you as much. But at first, it's like, really, it's about being prepared. I can actually tell you a story when I was, like, super nervous that maybe you'll like. When I first came back to playing music, this would have been 2019 sometime. There was that big flood that happened in Nebraska. And so, as one does, someone started a fundraiser show. So we did this fundraiser, and a guy that I used to be in a blues band with, he was the drummer, hit me up like, hey, will you play with me for just this one-off thing for this fundraiser? And I said, sure. But we didn't have, no one could get together to rehearse. So I just got sent a list of songs. Like, all right, these are the songs we're going to play. Dude, I hadn't played a show with a band in almost a decade. So I just learned the songs, and one of them was Stray Cat Strut by the Stray Cats. And I knew the song, the overall structure of it, so that wasn't a problem. And most of the time I just would have faked my way through the solo. But for some reason this time I'm like, this is the first show back. I'm going to learn this solo note for note, which is something I've never done. Spent like 3 weeks learning this solo. And man, at home in my apartment, I had it. then it comes to the show time. This is first show with the band in a long time. And we get to the solo, and I look out, and the only people in the crowd are just all these other bands. It's just a bar full of band members. And I get up to play that solo. I'm like, oh, I lost it. So it's just this epic crash and burn. And, and the thing is, like, all I had practiced was, like, learning the solo note for note. Hadn't practiced, like, improvising over it. And so I was totally unprepared for the crash and burn. And all I could do was try to find my way back into the solo I had learned. And that was rough. I was nervous on that one. But, I think you just have to, if you're out there and, if you happen to be listening to this and you're, kind of want to be a musician but you're just playing at home and you're super nervous to go and do it, just remember that every single person that's ever played music in front of people was nervous when they first did it. It's universal. There might be a few freaks out there that can just get up and do it. They have that personality. They're just a ham and they have no shame. But for the rest of us, like, we're all nervous. You just have to accept it. And, don't let that random feeling be what stops you from going and do it. Like, you just go do it. Just go do it. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. Find you an open mic night or, some short form thing where you only got to be up there for 10, 15 minutes. That's a good amount of time to endure that for the first time. And then, but the key is just doing it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I rambled for a long time there.
That's okay. Well, I want to turn this back over to Tasia here, but before I do, I might be the only one with these last couple questions in the room.
All right.
Just to talk quickly about gear, you play some very unique instruments. What set you down the course for the Fender Meteora? It's not really a Jaguar, it's not really a Jazzmaster, and it really doesn't sound like what it looks like.
So when I first started playing again and decided, like, okay, I'm going to get into a band, I wanted something that played like a Strat but didn't look or sound like a Strat. And the Meteora just came out, and I'm like, that's the ticket right there. It's got humbuckers, but it's got a Strat neck on it. That might be exactly it, and I loved how it looked. And so I cashed out my 401k and I bought it.
So you have a new resonator
Yeah.
as of the last few months here by the Mule brand. What in the world set you on the course for the Mule? Like, you hadn't seen one in a store before, had you?
No. The first one I'd ever seen in person was the one that I own. But I'd seen them in hands of lots of musicians that I like. And I just loved the sound. Again, it was kind of wanting just something different. It's like, I strummed away on regular old acoustic guitars for a long time. And I was just looking for a different sound. And I find that they're really articulate with the fingerstyle stuff. I get a lot of range of volume in there that I don't necessarily get on an acoustic guitar as much. And so yeah, and like the big, honestly, again, it was kind of a looks thing. They just look awesome. And so like it could sound, probably 30% worse than it does, and I'd still love it. Just because it looks so cool.
It does sound very good. I guess the last question there is, what turned you on to kind of... I'm gonna sanction this because this is how I feel my resonator sounds, as like a hobo-y kind of outlaw cowboy guitar sound. I mean, it's honestly a very niche guitar to play a resonator. What really put you on that path?
Well, again, that's that Delta blues thing. And I don't know how much you know about the history of the resonator guitar. And I don't know how much you want me to get into that on here, but the resonator guitar, they start in maybe the late 20s, early 30s. What was happening in music in general at that time is there was like jazz was already starting to get popular, and you had a lot of horn players in popular music. And at the time, there were no electric guitars. All the instruments were acoustic. No one was plugging in anything. And the problem was, if you played a regular acoustic guitar in a jazz band with horns, no one was hearing the guitar. And so the purpose of the resonator, the reason some guy designed it, was to make a guitar that was louder and could compete volume-wise with the horns. Now, it just so happens that, in doing that, he created an instrument that has a very distinct tone to it. And then, within not that many years, someone invents the amplifier. And so what happened is, like, the resonators had this brief moment of explosion in popularity, and then, oh, wait, you can plug in your old stuff now. And so resonators just diminished in popularity right away, which meant you could buy used ones inexpensively. And the Delta blues guys were, they're trying to play their blues music in these juke joints and get over a raucous crowd without a PA, and they're not plugged in at all. And so a lot of those guys could buy these secondhand resonators pretty affordably. So they'd pick them up, and then that became part of that blues sound. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I first heard it, is in old Delta blues stuff. And, I just love it.
Yeah. I think I first heard a resonator with the Traveling Wilburys.
Yeah.
Like songs like the Wilbury Twist and stuff, that was really,
Mm-hmm.
really popular for that kind of, hey, we're playing guitar on a train kind of vibe they were going for. So that's very cool.
One of the questions that was itching in the back of my mind while you were talking to Ben is when you were kind of talking about building a scene,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounded to me, like you understand that there's a lot of nuance in that. It's not just, hey, show up, or hey, play a show, and that, if I'm understanding correctly, I wouldn't say a problem, but like an issue that is a situation here is there's a lot of musicians,
Mm-hmm.
and they may be very niche, or they may be very general. How do we, kind of off of Ben's question, but instead of the musician, how do we, or what would you say to the prospective person with money in hand, hear all these bars?
Mm-hmm.
I got cover bands this way. I got nothing wrong with DJs, but DJs this way, samples,
Mm-hmm.
and all original music this way. What do we say to that person with the money as to why they should maybe come to the original music side of things, or that kind of area? Not that anything is wrong or not
Mm-hmm.
as good as the other, just because back to our thing about, like, I go there for that.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. I mean, if I knew, I'd be hollering from the mountaintops,
Fair enough.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of it is just, I'm not sure. I really don't know. Because on the one hand, I know we kind of touched on the streaming thing a little bit, where now you can get into some super niche stuff. And, there's part of me that thinks, like, that should be conducive to, like, a good music scene that embraces all kinds of weird stuff. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And it makes me wonder, like, what is it in, our culture or society, like, what is the music that people are gathering around these days? I don't necessarily know what that is. And that's, and some of that, like, I've kind of just embraced that. Like, I play a lot of old blues music. Like, that's going to be a niche thing for my life, probably forever,
I feel like, one of the things I try to do through this magazine, I think we also try to do through the podcast, is kind of tell folks, hey, like we were saying earlier, hear something you've never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of that comfort zone, stuff like that. Because, like, that's my personal opinion, is, like, to shout from the rooftops would be, hear something you've never heard before. Try something
sure.
new. And I don't know, because I feel like that's the hardest part about building a scene is when you have great quality musicians almost around every corner, like we do here, it's what do the fans need? And I don't feel it's something as simple as, oh, just cater to what is already popular.
Right.
You know, because, like, that's too simple of an answer. And
Yeah,
it takes away the originality.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to ask was, how long were you out of music? And if you want to touch on it, why were you out of music in the first place?
So, I had a a rather severe alcohol problem. You know, it got to a point where, you know, again, this was back. But right before I quit, I was playing 3 shows a week, and you know, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was playing somewhere. But I'd drink a bottle of whiskey, then go to the show, play all night, drink while I'm playing. Then after the show, go to the after party, drink all night, and then limp my way home. You know, usually the sun's coming up, like, oh, gotta go. And go home, get some sleep, and then get up and do it all over again. And that was kind of the cycle. And, you know, at the time, you know, that kind of all started, like, you know, we'd just gotten divorced, and, you know, wife and kid moved away, they moved out of town, so I was struggling with that. And then started dating another gal, and, you know, our relationship was based entirely around drinking and partying. That was the only way we knew how to communicate. But and she had a kid who was 3 when we met, and then I started thinking about, like, okay, one of us should quit, should get this under control. And you know, for whatever reason, I decided, like, yeah, I'll go first. And at the time, I didn't know how to be in the music scene, in bars 3 nights a week, and not drink all the time. And so I just had to let it go. And so I just
nix the whole thing.
Yeah. Yep. Just stopped all of it. I don't even think I told my bandmates. I think I just was just out.
God.
I was like, because I was like, if I tell them, if I have a conversation with them, you know, their response is going to be to talk me out of it.
Bring you back in.
Yeah. And if there's any sort of, like, if I allow any short of resistance to me leaving, I won't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I remember, like, hiding in this trailer I was living in, as, like, one of my bandmates was, like, pounding on my door trying to find me, and just like, nope, I can't answer that door. So I want to say I probably quit for 9 years, I think, thereabouts.
So for 9 years, and so when you came back on that open mic night,
Mm-hmm.
was it a matter of, I want to try something new, I want to prove something, or is it a matter of, I feel this is what I want to do, or it's the music or a calling of some?
So I think in the 9 years where I quit, you know, so I mean, I quit drinking, quit smoking, quit playing guitar, quit all the fun stuff, and you know, I think I realized at some point that, like, quitting the music was the wrong decision for me. Like, I needed that in my life. And I think ultimately, like, that's what brought me back, is that realization. Like, you know, 12-year relationship ends, and I'm living in this studio apartment by myself. And I'm just sitting there like, what do I do? I don't know. Like, there's no kids around. There's, like, no nothing. It's just me here. So I went and I got my guitars out of a storage unit, and
Dusted them off.
yeah, pulled them out, started playing again, and then realized, like, ooh, this feels really good. And And just instantly, like upon that happening, like mental health starts getting better. And like a bunch of stuff that was completely overwhelming in my life just said, all of a sudden, like, ooh, this is all way easier now. And it just having that outlet, that, you know, and
Music has that power, man.
For sure.
Whether you're making it or listening to it or consuming it in some kind of way, it. And see, for me, I don't make music.
Mhm.
I listen, and I thoroughly enjoy that I listen the way that I do. Try to, understand what's being said and doing things like that. And I can only imagine the joy of creating it. And then also looking back in a retrospect and going, wow, creating that piece or that music, that album, that thing, just jamming, changed my life, changed my outlook. It put me in a different trajectory than where I was going. That's crazy. Because I hear the story and I think about it as like an old knight dusting off a sword and coming back, And I'm telling you, man, I see you now. And I'm just taking it. I'm sitting back there in the kitchen. I'll let a sandwich sit for a few more minutes because I'm just so taken in by what I'm hearing and can't wait to get out of the kitchen to be out there and be in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. When it comes to music having, a deep effect or making you kind of change the paradigm of your life in that way and realizing, hey, my life without this. Have you seen that happen to other people?
I don't know. Well, I have like zero doubts that has happened. At the same time, it's like I feel like for a lot of people, it's very personal. And so, like, really, you're only going to see it in the musical output.
In the finished product of some kind.
Yeah, that's, you're going to hear it when they're on stage. You're like, I know where that guy's coming from. I've been there.
I feel that.
And it's, but yeah, I remember, I think the first time I ever heard a guy say it, it's one of the guys who initially got me singing. He hosted this open mic night that I started going to, and all I did was play. I was like, oh, the songs, go learn to sing them. So I did. But a few years later, was at some after party, and this guy was older. His name was Mike Adams. He was part of the local music scene here for many years. A great folk musician. But I remember him sitting at a kitchen table at this after party one night, just hanging out talking, and he's like, man, music has saved my life so many times. I'm 100% positive I wouldn't be here were it not for music. And that was, I don't know what year that was, but it was pretty early on in my musical journey. And but yeah, that was the first time I ever heard someone like really say it, and like he meant it.
It wasn't a flippant, vapid kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That's... because I think about that very often. I mean, what I try to tell people when Ben was asking about, what do we tell the musician who's in the basement and stuff, one of the things I tell people is imagine that you will go out there and you will play something and some guy comes in, maybe he just turned 21, worst day of his life just occurred. And not some big budget band, not somebody with $10 million. Someone in his own town, local, region, something like that, is going to fundamentally, on a core level, change the entire paradigm, change the whole perspective. And it's like, you have to imagine that even if you're not told that, you don't have that view into that person's experience or soul like that, that you might do that, or that it might happen to you. That's a very important facet of music. I don't want to say a higher level, but at a certain point, where it no longer becomes background noise. Because that's how I was. I mean, we're all like that when we're younger, but I was like that until I was about 22. It was just stuff in the background, and it was Tool that did that, but I superimposed that onto every music I listened to. It's background noise, but tune in and then tune out. And then if it's something that you're identifying with, tune in and stay tuned. And yeah, I mean, because I think to myself, every big band now was somebody tiny, in some corner somewhere. And it clearly had an effect on people. And maybe you won't be the next Kurt Cobain or Tool or any of these things, but you will fundamentally change people's lives. There are people who are not necessarily looking for your signature as much as they're looking to be within 2 feet of you. And not just you, but the music, the vibe, the whole idea. So, I mean, I don't know, I've always found that to be a very insane facet of music, that it has that abstract quality to it.
Yeah. Well, and like one thing I love to think about in that vein, so there's so many people out there that currently are going through life and have no idea that they're going to have that musical moment. They have no idea. It's like, that's most people, below a certain age haven't had that musical moment yet. And they're just going through life, listening to whatever it is that's on, because they haven't been in the right place at the right time and had the right piece of music hit them yet. And I'm kind of jealous of it.
I want to experience that for the first time all over again.
Yeah. But I think it's great that, like, man, they're going to have that moment at some point. And yeah, I mean, as a musician, the thought that, like, I could be that moment for somebody, like, that's cool.
Sick,
like,
bro.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if I'll be that moment for somebody, but I could be. It's possible. And that's not it's like, I mean, I think for myself personally at this point, like, I get to kind of be that moment for myself. It's like, I get to play music and have a moment with it. That's
like a dance.
Yeah, that's a big reason why I do it. It's like, I love that. Like, when you just get absolutely lost in a song, and but yeah, I don't know. I'm with you on that.
It's just such a crazy thing. What is that thing they say about music? It's the great communicator. It communicates without language, without any of that.
I remember having a kind of a debate, if you will, with my old roommate Adam, who I talked about earlier, who got me into kind of songwriting. He was very much all about the lyrics. Him, like, the guitar playing, that was the vehicle for the lyrics to arrive in,
Okay.
It was all very much about lyrics. And I, was still very much, like, I sang back then, but I was still very much a guitar player. And he was kind of very anti-guitar solo. And we had this debate all the time. And finally, I think when I finally kind of got through to him a little bit, it's like, look, dude, like, there's things I feel that I don't have words for.
So it speaks. I make it speak.
Right. I can convey emotions with the guitar that there just aren't words for. That's why good guitar solos exist. Like, at the same time, I get where he was coming from. Like, there's a lot of guitar solos that don't need to be there. But, like, good guitar playing can speak on an emotional level all by itself.
See, growing up in South Texas, I mean, effectively at that point, Low Mexico, but Santana, man, and at a certain point, it was almost an overused meme to just hear Santana in the street all the time. But I remember my dad being a foreigner from India, speaking to me on this different level of, no, you don't get it. He makes the guitar cry. And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And I sat down and I listened to Santana's Supernatural. When I heard him go from, I think he was on a track with Everclear, and then went on a track with a R&B group called the Refugee Camp, Maria Maria, and hearing that guitar and then it going into its own solo as a young child in the back seat, I'm hallucinating words that aren't there because the guitar speaks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I kind of scrunched my face when you said your homie was like, oh, he hates guitar solos. I'm like, I can respect it. You know, like, I mean, with metal, there, you know, comes this whole, if you're talking like Avenged Sevenfold, a solid minute and a half. Love it. But it doesn't sing and speak and cry like a Santana
I mean,
solo.
sometimes guitar playing can be a sport. But I think that's okay, personally. It's okay. And look, it's, you know, it's all right that people race the 100-meter dash. It's okay. It's okay to take the guitar. It doesn't have to be, you know, a magical, emotional thing every time you pick it up. It's okay to pick it up and just like, ha, watch this, you know. like that's okay sometimes. So I'm not even anti that kind of guitar playing. It's like, that's cool. I can watch guys do it and like, wow, that's neat.
One question I've always kind of asked guitar players, or sometimes I can just ascertain by their playing style, like, that guy would never harm this. When I was a young lad and I first saw a live video of Kurt Cobain pick up a guitar, and also Pete Townsend from The Who, pick up a guitar, go like this, and the wild eyes slam that thing into the ground. Now, I know you work at Yondish Pro Audio.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily would you ever do that. How do you feel about the energy conveyed through the music, or in such a way that an artist may feel or choose to represent the feelings by breaking an instrument? What are your thoughts on that? Because to me, I find it cathartic.
Yeah.
I find it just release. But it's also something I would never personally do. Not so much that I love my instruments, it's that I could never imagine destroying something like that.
Yeah, I think it, you know, I don't have an issue with it. You know, I mean, I think just by the nature of the music I make, I'd never be an instrument smasher. But
Hallelujah.
But you know, I mean, that's kind of it's kind of that punk rock attitude, you know, which I embrace fully. You know, it's like I love it. Look, if it's your guitar,
Yeah,
you want to
exactly.
smash it, that's fine. You know, I'd say the only time where I'm like, that's dumb, is if, you know, it's a shtick. It's where it's part of a thing. I don't know. Like, it's a little bit lame if you're smashing a guitar at every show during the same song.
As opposed to, like, it's a feeling you're caught up.
Yeah, right. When it's a off the cuff thing, okay. If that's what'll make you feel better.
There was this cover band in San Antonio. I don't remember what they called themselves, but the person who was effectively Kurt, her name was Roach, is what we called her, but it was like Antonella Rocha. And at the time, she had, blonde hair in the face, the whole vibe. And she was just cutting those strings so crazy, was feeling every inch of this. The light hit her in such a way and she even learned how to play left-handed just to be, there with it. And when the light hit her in such a way, for just a second, I was like, oh my God, that's Kurt. And in this, I was like somebody going Super Saiyan, man. I don't know. Like, in this upheaval of emotion, she's doing, I think it was Breed or something like that, or Milk It. One of these, like, harder, distorted things. Last song takes it off, and I went, oh my God. And because I just knew it. And she slams that thing on the ground. and walks off, like show's over, whole thing's over. And something possessed me to run up and grab that guitar. And I was like, I need to have this. And do you remember, Waylon, in my garage, I had that split in half guitar for the Ever. And it was just, it called back to somebody, who's not been with us for a minute. And I understand, big band and all that. But seeing somebody like channel that, feel that song, even if it was a cover, so intensely that she shatters it, and then it turns out she never wanted to play music again. She figured, not again, I didn't want to play that kind of music again, and figured she got it all out, like all out of her system. And I basically was allowed to keep that broken guitar as a representation.
That's a cool moment. Like that's just the thing. Maybe this is something that I have perspective on that unless you're a musician, maybe you don't, like when you go to a show, I don't know. One thing that I've realized, like when I go on the road and play a bunch of shows close together, like it makes it really hard to have a moment because I just did this last night.
Okay.
Like it's
for you, it's Groundhog Day. For them, it's fresh.
Right. And so it's like you're kind of walking this line where you got to probably witness a real authentic moment there, but a lot of times when you're seeing a live band, like it's not a moment for them. Like you're having a moment. They're like, it's Tuesday, man.
Damn, dude, am I having lamb chops after this? Like,
it's like, yeah. And it's a weird thing as a musician, like I'm out there for the moment, but I think that's one of the reasons why I've never had like a set list. I just don't make them. I'll think of one or two songs that I want to start with, depending on how I'm feeling. Like, are the fingers tight and sore? Like, I might pick a few to get them limbered up to put at the beginning, or if my vocals are weird, Like, but beyond that, then it's like, how do I feel? Because I'm trying to have a moment. Yeah, it's interesting. Did you see Dakaiju when they were here?
oh my God, that was one of the times of my life.
I don't know how they do it. I don't know how, it was amazing. It was, because before the show, they're all super quiet and reserved.
Just hanging out.
And,
Hey, can I put this here? Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And it's, they're just storing up all the energy for that 45 minutes?
God, is that what it was? It felt like 3
I think
hours.
I think it was like 45 minutes to an hour to tops.
I have a very short video from that show, and I had to get out of the crowd for a second because for the first time since Warped Tour, I was just and I'm scanning the room with my camera. There's you playing drums. Somebody else is doing something. The girl has a guitar on fire.
Yeah.
Right next to the damn sprinkler, and I'm like, you know what? These are the professionals. And I'm like, they know.
Yeah.
And then just looking around, transported. And then we went up and kind of smoked with them a little bit. And, we were asking them, hey, what the f*** is it like, man? How do you do this? And they're like, the mask goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I know what that means, philosophically, but I can't imagine.
It's, I've seen a lot of, bands with what you would call a shtick over the years. And you see him a couple times and, then the magic goes away because you just see it as shtick. But I don't think I could ever see Dakaiju and see it. Even though I know, the fire stuff, they do that at pretty much every show. There's a lot of beats in there that they do at every show, but somehow, I have a feeling that that's just awesome every single time,
Oh,
which is amazing. I don't know how they do it.
Okay, so you've seen them more than once?
I have not.
You have not. Oh,
No,
okay.
I have not. So I could be all wrong. I maybe 3-4 times in, I'm like,
I think that
they lit the symbols on fire last time. You know?
the two things that got me were the fire, but then also the part where they just handed instruments to people
Yeah.
and fucking walked out of the building
Yeah.
and went and had a smoke or whatever. And I'm jamming. I'm like between the sound, and I open my eyes. And I'm like,
Band's gone.
"Where's the band?" Yeah, and I'm like
Yeah.
Cliff and Drew Hardage,
Yeah.
and I think had instruments, and I'm just like, where'd they go? Was it all a dream? Like
Yeah.
And then they come in and they're going like this, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I was wondering if that was a repeat thing or if that was just what they did because it was more chill or like.
Well, I think, I really think that they're, I don't know, it seems to me that they invite a certain amount of chaos. Like, they walk that line like, this could go terribly wrong. And that's, I think probably, in my mind, why it probably doesn't turn into a shtick. Because it's right on the line of just...
Absolute chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could have had a sprinkler system go off.
Right,
People screw up the chords or anything they were doing when they handed instruments or anything.
Yeah.
It was an experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was something else.
That was cool.
Has there been anything else in your time or that you have seen where it was like that? Where it was like, holy shit, what did I just do?
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. I've had stuff hit as hard, but in a different way. But yeah, I mean, they are that's a singular experience. I mean, that was, and I knew what it was going to be because I'd been told, and it was still like, wow. Yeah, that was a good one. That was just this year, wasn't it? That was probably a highlight of this year, maybe.
And I also heard obviously that they played at Pawnstock once or twice.
Yeah.
You've played at Pawnstock or been to Pawnstock? Or
Yes, I have.
Yes to both? Or?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I've only heard legends because I am one of the fools who has not gone, but has only heard about it for the past 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I hear next year is 20.
Yeah.
What is Pawnstock?
Pawnstock at its core is a bunch of friends gather in what used to be a cow pasture and throw a music festival. At its simplest, in the simplest terms, that's what it is. It's a bunch of homies. Like, what would be really cool? Is if we got some bands out here. I don't know. I wasn't there at the beginning. I don't know how that all started.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're like, yeah, this next summer will be 20th, and it's grown. I think they started out, it was like a one night, Saturday night. Then they filled up Saturday night, and like, well, we could do Friday night too, and it's great. I love it. It's my favorite weekend of the whole year.
Because, before I worked at a smoke shop, so I only heard about it from the distance. Then Waylon and I started working at the Toasted Goat at the other side, and then it became closer. And then when people came back, it was this. Just staring off into space as if they had seen aliens, God himself, anything. And, every sunburnt and red and itching. But then, it was, hey, man, how was the weekend? Incredible. I can't even describe it to you. And it's like, it is from the sense of the bands and the experience, and because there's so much space, a lot more can happen than in a confined venue space, and that's any venue. I've been invited for the 20th. I hear it's incredible experience, and I'm probably going to be sitting in the same chair one day just going myself, and I can't wait. But it's Mr. Vic Guerin or Guy
Jerome.
Jerome?
Yeah.
So Vic Jerome that puts that on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Lake Headkey?
Yes. Which, I mean, they call it Lake Headkey, but it's, it's all private property. It's not.
Oh.
It's more of a pond
Okay,
than a lake. It's not like if you try to Google map Lake Headkey, you're not going to get there.
Okay.
But yeah, it is west of Trenton, Nebraska, just a few miles west of Trenton, Nebraska, and it's just great. And now it's just a big like community thing, like. I mean, I go there because it's like there's a lot of musicians that's maybe the 1 week a year where I'll see them, and they're like friends of mine, or we've become friends over the years, and like that's the only time they'll be in the area, and they will drive a long ways just to be at Pawnstock. But it's a magical place, man. It's something. It is unique. I've never seen anything else quite like it, and it's just. Everyone's so, like, it's just good people all around, both on stage and off. Like, the people that just go to listen, so many good people. The band's good people. I mean, I feel like that's the common thing that ties that all together is just.
I've just heard beautiful stories. I mean, just, from damn, I ran out of water. And someone came by and said, "Hey, man, here's a few water bottles, man, and we got some stuff over here. Come over by our camp, move over this way." To, the sun goes down, stars come out, and the bonfires come out. Stuff like that. The grilling going through the air. People, going around meeting each other for the first time or the 50th time. Mm-hmm. After 1 week or 8 years. And it's... That is the thing about, again, I've never had okay, so like anybody who tours or moves around would probably go, yeah, no, I wouldn't say privilege, but I've never had the privilege to move around the United States in such a way to where it's almost like, the shipmasters of the pirate age, where it's like, hey, man, I'll see you in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that somewhere out there in the wide United States, you have friends out there somewhere, and they're moving around, and you will see each other again. And it's at places like that.
Yeah.
Like that, I don't know, it showed me a whole different way to view the distance in the United States through shows and festivals. And so I can't wait to go there and see. I'm a people watcher. Just walking by and watching people going, "You son of a bitch, how have you been?" It's been 6 years. And to me, I might just tear up for a second. But when it comes to the music and stuff, I mean, the music of Pawnstock, is there any defined genre, or is it basically anybody, everybody? What's up with that?
I mean, I want to say it definitely has a vibe. I don't know
how to
pinpoint what that vibe is.
I feel
it's really hard. Like, I think if you're there, it's like, oh yeah, it does have there's definitely a cohesive vibe to it, but at the same time, it's, the day starts and it's just singer-songwriters, playing acoustic guitar. That might be me up there, opening it up, doing my thing. And then by the end of the night, it's a metal band. So there's no, musically speaking, there isn't a defined genre that is Pawnstock. It can be anything. And, I can guarantee you will see a couple acts that, you won't even know how to describe what the genre of music that was. I've never heard or seen anything like that before.
See, that gets my heart jumping, because I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to see something brand new.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like, were you at Pawnstocktober?
Yes, this year, yes.
That was a pretty good little taste of the variety,
Oh, Johnny V and all.
Yeah.
Yourself and And you know what? Exactly. The way it just went on all fronts, from just the roots of blues to watch this distortion, watch these different things one man or a set of people can do. The fact that Johnny V was making, I keep harping about him because that much noise meaning just music, sound, stuff, coming from one man, one guy. What a sampler, as you said.
Yeah.
What an idea.
Now imagine that over 3 days.
Oh God.
And it starts earlier every single day.
Sounds like a dream.
It's great. It's the coolest thing. It's so much fun, and it's like, then there's the fact that like you are like rough camping in a cow pasture in Nebraska in June.
It's hot.
It's either blisteringly hot or there's storms rolling through that are just wrecking everyone's campsites.
Is it a rain or shine type event?
It absolutely is. They
Hell yeah.
This summer, Saturday it started, like I think Friday we had like real strong storm come through. That was real quick. Not too bad. It actually cooled it off. It was getting really hot on Friday. Fortunately it rained and that made it okay. And then Saturday started in the afternoon. It just drizzled. And music never slowed down. They never even considered stopping it. It's like, no, we're going. So it's just a little drizzle. It's fine. No, it's great. It's great. It's so much fun. But, yeah. Saturday night the lineup this year was insane. Can only imagine what the 20th one's going to look like.
Do you have any questions for us or anything that you want to plug or anything like that? Because I know that you definitely are so you have your own Paul Hanich, Personal Blues Revelations.
Yeah.
What else?
That's it.
That's it?
And the band is currently on hiatus, so really wanting to focus on the solo stuff, but I don't know. I've got limited mental energy, and I don't know, just getting to the age where I want to put it all into one thing.
I feel that.
And really focus and like zero in and make it as good as I can make it.
And he kind of said that since that was your last show this year, you're really honing in on recording.
Right now I'm moving all the gear up into the apartment finally instead of in my van. So yeah, I mean that's just the struggle of like playing shows. It's like I use the same gear to record as I use to play shows. And so I got to haul it up and down those stairs. And like when I'm playing a lot of shows, I just don't. I'm just leaving the van, carry guitars up and down. But, and so if I'm trying to record, it's just a lot of energy to, like, okay, I got a show Friday, so I got to carry everything down and get it loaded up sometime, between when I get off work at 8 p.m. on Thursday. And, like it's just a lot of energy. So I said, to heck with that. Just gave up on recording this year because like I was playing so many shows. It's like there ain't no way. So I just put that to the side, and so figured these last 2 months since I didn't like have a lot of stuff pop up, I'll probably play something New Year's Eve. But until then, yeah, I'm gonna take the 2 months and try to crank an album out. We'll see. But yeah, so hang tight. Maybe sometime next year an album will come out. We'll see.
Shit.
We'll see what happens.
Well, whatever does happen, I can't wait for it.